Hello everyone, I am very glad that you're joining this story. Subscribe, like and comment. Enjoy the story, smile more often.
They say your worst betrayal comes from the people you trust the most, but I always thought that was just a dramatic saying. My life was steady, stable, solid, or at least, I thought it was. My husband, Mark, and I had been married for 5 years. We were saving up to buy our first house. Things weren't perfect. We had our arguments, sure, but I felt like we were working towards something together. And then there was Emma, my younger sister. Emma was the kind of person who could light up a room, but she'd been through hell after her last relationship. Her ex had cheated on her, and she moved in with us while she figured out her next steps. I didn't hesitate to take her in. She was family, my little sister, practically my best friend. In hindsight, I can see how naive I was. I thought I was helping her get back on her feet. I thought I was being a good sister. But that illusion shattered one evening while I was cleaning the living room. Mark had left his phone on the coffee table, and a notification popped up. I wasn't trying to snoop, but when I saw Emma's name on the screen, curiosity got the better of me. The message read, "We need to tell her. I can't keep hiding this. I'm pregnant." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It felt like the room had tilted sideways. At first, I thought I must be misunderstanding. Maybe she wasn't talking about Mark. Maybe she'd met someone else. But my gut was already screaming at me that something was wrong. I unlocked his phone. I know, I shouldn't have. But at that moment, I didn't care about boundaries or privacy. I scrolled up through their messages, my heart pounding harder with every line I read. They weren't just friendly texts. These were intimate, confessional. Emma was saying things like, "You make me feel alive again, and I hate sneaking around, but it's worth it to be with you." And Mark? Mark was worse. He talked about how he felt trapped in our marriage, how Emma understood him in ways I never could. Then I saw my name. "I don't know how much longer I can keep lying to my name," Emma had written. "We'll tell her when the time is right," Mark replied. "She'll understand eventually." Understand? Understand what? That my sister and my husband, the two people I trusted more than anyone, had betrayed me? That they'd been sneaking around behind my back in my own house? The final nail in the coffin was the ultrasound photo Emma had sent him a few days earlier. It was clear as day. She was pregnant, and the baby was Mark's. I dropped the phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely think. My stomach churned, and for a moment, I thought I was going to throw up. How long had this been going on? How had I not seen it? When Mark came home that night, I was sitting in the living room, the phone still on the table in front of me. He walked in, smiling, carrying takeout like it was just another normal evening. "Hey," he said, setting the bags down. "I got your favorite." I couldn't even look at him. "We need to talk." Something in my voice must have tipped him off because his smile disappeared. "What's wrong?" I grabbed his phone and tossed it toward him. He caught it awkwardly, looking confused. "Read the last messages from Emma," I said. His face paled as he unlocked the screen. I could see the panic setting in as his eyes darted over the words. "I can explain," he stammered. "Explain what?" I snapped, standing up. "That you've been sleeping with my sister? That you got her pregnant? What part of this are you planning to explain, Mark?" Before he could answer, Emma walked in from the guest room. She froze when she saw us, her face immediately going red. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You tell me," I said, my voice cold. "Or should I let Mark explain it for you?" Emma's eyes darted between us, and I could see her starting to crumble. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she said, tears streaming down her face. It just did. It just did." I yelled, my voice shaking with anger. "You slept with my husband, Emma. You're pregnant with his child. And you're standing there crying like you're the victim?" She tried to grab my hands, but I yanked them away. "Please, just let me explain," she sobbed. But I couldn't take it anymore. I stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind me and leaving them both standing there in silence. That night, I locked myself in the bedroom while they whispered in the living room. I couldn't bring myself to listen to their pathetic attempts to justify what they'd done. Every word I'd read replayed in my head, every moment of the past few months suddenly taking on new meaning. The way Mark had been working late more often. The way Emma had started avoiding eye contact with me. I'd opened my home to her, given her a place to feel safe, and she'd repaid me by destroying my marriage. And Mark? He hadn't just betrayed me. He'd shattered the life we were building together. By the time the sun came up, I knew one thing for sure. Nothing would ever be the same again. I didn't think. I didn't plan. The moment Mark's messages sank in, I marched straight to the guest room where Emma was folding laundry. The phone was clenched in my hand, and my heart felt like it was pounding in my throat. She looked up when I burst through the door, her face going from calm to panicked in a split second. "Explain this," I said, holding up the phone. My voice was low and icy because if I let myself scream, I wasn't sure I'd stop. Her eyes flicked to the phone and then back to me, and all the color drained from her face. She didn't even try to play dumb. I can explain," she stammered. "No," I said, my voice shaking. "I want the truth, Emma, right now. Did you sleep with my husband? Are you pregnant?" She stared at me like a deer caught in headlights, and then the tears started. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she said, her voice breaking. It just did. It just did." I repeated, my anger rising like a tidal wave. "You slept with my husband, Emma, in my house, and now you're pregnant? And you're standing here crying like you're the victim?" "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you." "Hurt me?" I cut her off, laughing bitterly. "Hurt me? Emma, you didn't just hurt me. You destroyed my marriage, my life. Do you even realize what you've done?" She tried to grab my hands, but I yanked them away like her touch might burn me. "Please, just listen," she begged. "I wasn't thinking straight. Mark and we didn't plan this. It just happened." "There it is again," I snapped. "It just happened. Like you tripped and fell into my husband's bed?" Her face crumpled, and she started sobbing harder, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. Every word she said felt like another knife twisting in my back. "How long?" I demanded. "What? How long has this been going on?" She hesitated, looking anywhere but at me. "A few months," she said finally. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "A few months," I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "You've been sneaking around with my husband for months, and you didn't think to stop? To tell me the truth?" "I didn't know how," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't want to lose you." "You didn't want to lose me?" I said, laughing bitterly. "Emma, you lost me the second you decided to sleep with Mark." I couldn't take it anymore. I stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind me. I needed space, air, anything to keep myself from completely breaking down. But the second I stepped into the living room, it hit me all over again. This was my house, my sanctuary, and now it felt tainted. Mark came home later that evening, acting like it was just another day. He walked through the door, set down his bag, and smiled at me like nothing was wrong. "Hey," he said, "how was your day?" I didn't answer. I just picked up his phone from the coffee table and tossed it to him. "What's this?" he asked, catching it awkwardly. "Read it," I said, my voice cold. He unlocked the phone, and as soon as he saw the messages, his face fell. "I can explain," he said quickly. "Don't," I said, my voice trembling. "Just don't. I already heard Emma's excuses, and I don't need yours." He opened his mouth to say something, but I didn't let him. "How long?" I asked, cutting him off. "How long have you been screwing my sister?" He hesitated, running a hand through his hair. "It's not what you think," he said finally. "Not what I think." I snapped. "You got her pregnant, Mark. What the hell am I supposed to think?" "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," he said, his voice rising. "We didn't plan for this." "Stop," I said. "Just stop. I want the truth. The whole truth. Right now." He hesitated again, and for a moment, I thought he might actually try to deny it. But then he sighed and sat down on the couch, like the weight of the situation had finally hit him. "It started a few months ago," he admitted. "After Emma moved in, I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. So this whole time," I said, my voice shaking, "this whole time, you've been lying to me." To my face. "It wasn't like that," he said quickly. "I didn't mean for it to happen. But you were so distant, and Emma, she understood me in a way you didn't." I stared at him, stunned. "Are you seriously blaming this on me?" "I'm not blaming you," he said. "I'm just saying things between us haven't been great lately." "Mark, don't you dare," I said, cutting him off. "Don't you dare try to make this my fault. You're the one who cheated with my sister." The argument spiraled from there. Mark tried to justify what he'd done, claiming that he and Emma had connected on a level we never had. He said he didn't want to hurt me, that he still loved me, but every word out of his mouth just made me angrier. By the time it was over, I was exhausted. I told Mark to sleep on the couch and locked myself in the bedroom, not even bothering to grab my things from the guest room where Emma had barricaded herself. Lying in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I felt like my entire life had fallen apart in the span of a single day. My husband had betrayed me. My sister had betrayed me. The next morning, after a sleepless night of staring at the ceiling and replaying the betrayal over and over in my head, I made a decision. I needed my parents. They know what to do. They'd be furious, of course. They loved Emma, but even they couldn't excuse something this horrific. Surely, they'd have my back. I called them after pacing around my kitchen for almost an hour, my hands trembling as I hit dial. My mom answered on the second ring, her warm, familiar voice cutting through my swirling thoughts. "Hey, sweetheart, how are you?" That was all it took. I broke down. I told her everything. The affair, the pregnancy, how Emma had been lying to me for months, all of it spilling out in one breathless rant. I was crying by the end of it, my voice raw and cracked. I expected outrage, maybe even tears. But instead, there was a long pause. Finally, my mom said, "It's not the end of the world, honey. We'll get through this as a family." I thought I'd misheard her. "What?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Emma's pregnant now," she said, as if that explained everything. "We have to think about what's best for the baby." I stared at the phone in disbelief, trying to process what I'd just heard. "Mom, are you serious?" "She slept with my husband. How can you talk about what's best for the baby when she's the reason my marriage is falling apart?" "I know you're hurt," my mom said softly, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "But these things happen. Nobody's perfect, and we can't change what's already done. What we can do is move forward." "Move forward?" I said, my voice rising. "Move forward how? Am I just supposed to pretend this didn't happen?" "No," she said, sounding frustrated now. "But holding on to anger isn't healthy, either. Emma made a mistake." "She didn't make a mistake," I shouted. "She made a series of deliberate choices to betray me, and so did Mark. Why are you acting like this is something I just need to get over?" My mom sighed, as if I was the one being unreasonable. "Because she's pregnant. My name? There's a baby involved now. We can't let this ruin our family." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Our family? Emma wasn't just some stranger. They were acting like she hadn't just destroyed my life. "What about me?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Don't I matter?" "Of course you matter," my mom said quickly. "But holding on to this anger isn't going to help you. We're all family, and family forgives." I was so stunned I almost laughed. Family forgives? What about loyalty? What about respect? I turned to my dad, hoping he'd be the voice of reason. "Dad, what do you think?" He cleared his throat, sounding awkward. "It's a difficult situation," he said slowly. "But your mom's right. Emma's going to have a baby. That has to come first." I stared at the phone, feeling like I was losing my mind. "So what?" I said. "You just want me to forgive her and let her raise Mark's baby like nothing happened?" "It's not that simple," my dad said. "But she's your sister, my name, and she's carrying your niece or nephew. At the end of the day, blood is thicker than water." I hung up on them. I couldn't listen to another word. The betrayal wasn't just coming from Emma and Mark anymore. It was coming from my parents, the people who were supposed to love and protect me. Over the next few days, things only got worse. My parents kept calling, leaving voicemails asking me to come home so we could talk about this as a family. They made it sound like I was the one causing the problem, like my refusal to forgive Emma was the real issue. The final straw came when my mom showed up at my house unannounced. She stood in my doorway. Holding a pie like this was just another family spat. "Honey," she said, giving me that soft, maternal smile. "Let's sit down and talk." I didn't let her in. "There's nothing to talk about," I said coldly. "Yes, there is," she insisted. "I know you're upset, but Emma is devastated. She hasn't stopped crying since you confronted her." "Good," I said. My mom frowned. "That's not fair. She's your sister, and she's going through a lot right now, and I'm not." I shot back. "She destroyed my marriage, Mom. She betrayed me in the worst way possible, and you want me to feel sorry for her?" "She didn't mean to hurt you," my mom said, her voice trembling. "She's just lost right now. She needs her sister." "I needed my sister," I said, my voice breaking. "And look what she did to me." My mom didn't know what to say to that. She stood there for a long moment, looking like she wanted to argue, but finally, she just sighed. "I hope you'll come to your senses eventually," she said quietly. When I closed the door, I felt a strange mixture of relief and heartbreak. My parents had made their choice. They'd chosen Emma. I sat on the couch, staring at the wall, and realized something that made my chest ache. I didn't have a family anymore. Not really. The people I'd trusted most in the world had turned their backs on me, and now I was completely alone. The morning after the confrontation with Mark and Emma, I made my decision. There was no way I was letting Emma stay in my house, not after what she'd done. My home, which once felt like a safe space, now felt contaminated, every corner tainted by betrayal. The very idea of her continuing to sleep under my roof made my stomach churn. I walked into the guest room where she was still staying, sitting cross-legged on the bed like nothing had happened. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes, clutching a tissue. "You need to leave," I said, my voice steady. Her face crumpled immediately. "What? Where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my problem," I said coldly. "You had no problem betraying me under this roof, so I have no problem telling you to pack your things. You've got until the end of the day." She broke down, sobbing into her hands. "Please, my name. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. I have nowhere else to go." "Then you should have thought of that before you slept with my husband," I snapped. "Find somewhere else. Mom and Dad's, a friend's house, a motel. I don't care. But you're not staying here." She kept begging, her voice breaking as she pleaded with me to reconsider. But I was done being the responsible big sister. I was done cleaning up her messes and putting her needs ahead of mine. This wasn't just some mistake I could forgive. She destroyed my marriage, my trust, and our relationship as sisters. She could figure it out on her own. By the time I walked out of the room, I felt a mixture of anger and relief. For the first time in days, I felt like I was taking back some control. But, of course, my family wasn't about to let me have the last word. The next morning, my parents showed up at my house, uninvited and full of opinions. My mom stood in the doorway with her hands on her hips, while my dad hovered behind her, looking sheepish but determined. "We need to talk," my mom said, stepping inside before I could stop her. I folded my arms and glared at her. "I already know what you're going to say. She's pregnant." "My name," my mom said, as if that was supposed to erase everything. "You can't just kick her out." "Watch me," I said flatly. My dad chimed in, his voice low and serious. "Do you really want to be the reason your sister's baby has no roof over their head?" That did it. The guilt trip tactic pushed me over the edge. "No," I snapped. "Emma and Mark are the reason this baby has no roof over their head. They made their choices, not me. And I'm not going to let you make me feel guilty for finally standing up for myself." My mom shook her head, looking genuinely disappointed in me. "I thought you were better than this," she said. "Better than what?" I shot back. "Better than putting myself first for once? Better than refusing to let someone who betrayed me walk all over me? If that's what you think, then you don't know me at all." She looked taken aback, but my dad stepped in before she could respond. "We understand that you're hurt," he said. "But Emma's going through a lot right now. You're her big sister. She needs you." "No, she doesn't," I said firmly. "She needs to grow up and deal with the consequences of her actions. And if you're so worried about her, why don't you take her in?" My mom hesitated, glancing at my dad. That was the first crack in their united front, and it made me suspicious. "What?" I asked. "Why can't she stay with you?" After a long pause, my mom sighed. "Because we can't handle her right now," she admitted. I froze. "What do you mean, you can't handle her?" "She's been difficult," my mom said, avoiding my eyes. "After her breakup, we tried to help her, but she was so emotional and unpredictable. We thought staying with you would be better for everyone, so you dumped her on me," I said, my voice icy. My dad looked uncomfortable. "That's not how we saw it." "That's exactly what you did," I snapped. "You didn't want to deal with her, so you pawned her off on me and let her ruin my life. And now you want me to keep taking care of her because you can't be bothered?" My mom looked at me like I was being unreasonable. "You're her sister," she said. "Family helps each other." "Not like this," I said. "If you want to help her, take her to your house." "But she's not staying here." They didn't have a response to that. After a few more half-hearted attempts to guilt-trip me, they finally left, their disappointment practically radiating off of them. I leaned against the door after they were gone, feeling a strange mixture of exhaustion and triumph. For the first time, I'd stood my ground. I wasn't letting my parents or my sister manipulate me anymore. Emma packed her things later that afternoon. She didn't say much, just sniffled quietly as she loaded her bags into her car. I didn't say goodbye, and neither did she. As I watched her drive away, I felt a pang of sadness, but it was drowned out by relief. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt like I could finally start picking up the pieces of my life. I thought I'd reached the peak of my anger when I kicked Emma out and told my parents to mind their own business. I thought, foolishly, that the worst was behind me. But apparently, I underestimated how low Mark could go. It started on a Monday, 2 days after Emma had moved out. I was at work, trying to lose myself in the endless barrage of emails and meetings. It was the only thing keeping me sane, staying busy and pretending, just for a few hours, that my personal life wasn't a complete dumpster fire. I was midway through a particularly dry spreadsheet when one of my coworkers popped her head into my office, her eyes wide with curiosity. There's a guy here to see you, she said. What? I asked, confused. Big guy, holding flowers, she said with a smirk. He's waiting in the lobby. My heart sank. I already knew who it was. Sure enough, when I walked out to the lobby, there was Mark, standing there like some pathetic rom-com reject with a massive bouquet of roses. He spotted me immediately and plastered on the most pitiful, apologetic expression I'd ever seen. My name, he said, stepping toward me. What are you doing here? I snapped, crossing my arms. I needed to see you, he said, holding out the flowers like some kind of peace offering. I wanted to apologize. You've done that already, I said coldly. Now get out. Wait, he said quickly, blocking my path as I tried to leave. Please, just hear me out. I messed up, okay? I know that. But what happened with Emma? It meant nothing. I let out a harsh laugh, loud enough that a few people in the lobby turned to look. It meant nothing? I repeated. Then why is my sister pregnant with your child? He flinched like I'd slapped him, but he recovered quickly. It was one mistake, he said. One terrible, stupid mistake. I wasn't thinking clearly, and I got caught up in something I shouldn't have. But it doesn't mean I don't love you. Love me? I said, shaking my head. Mark, do you even hear yourself? You cheated on me. With my sister. How am I supposed to believe you love me after that? Because it's the truth, he said earnestly. I know I've been a terrible husband, but I want to fix this. I want to fix us. Please, my name. Give me another chance. For a second, I just stared at him, stunned by his audacity. Did he really think a bouquet of flowers and a few half-hearted apologies would erase everything he'd done? No, I said finally. What? He asked, looking genuinely shocked. No, I repeated. There is no fixing this, Mark. There is no us. You destroyed that the second you decided to sleep with my sister. But we can work through it, he insisted, his voice desperate now. I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever it takes to be a better man. I need you to help me. Stop, I said, holding up a hand. Do you hear how selfish you sound right now? You don't want to fix this for me. You want to fix it for you. You're not sorry for what you did. You're just sorry you got caught. That's not true, he said, but his voice wavered, and I could see the cracks forming in his carefully constructed facade. Do you even want this baby? I asked suddenly, catching him off guard. What? The baby, I said. Do you even care about it? Or are you just trying to hold on to me because you're scared of what your life looks like without me? He didn't answer right away, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. I stepped closer, dropping my voice so only he could hear me. You and Emma deserve each other, I said. But you don't deserve me. Now get out of my life. Before he could respond, I grabbed the flowers out of his hands, turned, and tossed them straight into the trash can by the door. The stems bent awkwardly, petals falling to the floor, but I didn't care. Don't come back, I said over my shoulder as I walked away. Back in my office, I shut the door and leaned against it, my heart pounding. I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. Instead, I just felt empty, hollowed out by weeks of lies, betrayal, and heartbreak. But as I sat back down at my desk and stared at my computer screen, one thought cut through the fog of anger and pain. It was time to move on. That evening, I started looking up divorce lawyers. Mark's pathetic plea had only made it clearer that there was no saving my marriage. Whatever we'd had was gone, shattered by the weight of his choices. And I wasn't about to waste another second of my life waiting for him to clean up his mess. When I sent the initial email to a lawyer, it felt like a tiny weight lifting off my chest. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Mark might have thought he could talk his way out of this, but he was wrong. My life wasn't his to fix anymore. It was mine to rebuild, and I was finally ready to take the first step. With Emma out of my house, I thought I'd get a break from her drama. But, of course, that was wishful thinking. She'd moved in with my parents, who immediately wrapped her in a cocoon of sympathy and indulgence. To hear them talk, you'd think she was the victim, not the person who had destroyed my marriage. She's fragile right now, my mom said when I called to ask why they were letting her off the hook so easily. Pregnancy is hard enough without all this stress. What stress? I snapped. She made this mess, Mom. She's not some helpless child. She's a grown woman who slept with her sister's husband. My mom sighed like I was the unreasonable one. She knows she made a mistake. My name. But punishing her isn't going to change anything. We need to focus on the baby now. The baby. That was their go-to excuse for everything. Every time I tried to talk to them about how hurt and betrayed I felt, they'd bring up the baby, like it was a magic wand that erased Emma's actions. Meanwhile, Emma was trying to play both sides. She'd call me every few days, always starting with an apology that felt about as genuine as a $3 bill. "I'm so sorry. My name," she'd say, her voice dripping with fake remorse. "I never wanted to hurt you." "You didn't just hurt me," I reminded her every time. "You betrayed me." "I know," she'd say, sniffling like she was the one who deserved pity. "I hate myself for it. I really do. But it just happened." That was her favorite line. It just happened. Like cheating on your sister with her husband was some kind of freak accident. Like she tripped and fell into his arms. I could practically hear her rehearsing the excuses in her head, trying to frame herself as a victim of circumstance rather than the architect of her own disaster. The worst was when she said, "You can't control love." Love? I snapped, my blood boiling. "Is that what you call destroying your sister's life? Love?" She hesitated, and I could tell she hadn't expected me to push back so hard. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she mumbled. "Stop saying that," I said. "You're not some innocent bystander, Emma. You made a choice. You knew what you were doing, and you did it anyway." She didn't respond, but I wasn't finished. "You don't get to call this love. Love doesn't look like sneaking around behind someone's back. Love doesn't look like lying to your sister for months. If that's your idea of love, then you don't know the first thing about it." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, she said, "You're never going to forgive me, are you?" "Why should I?" I shot back. "You haven't even taken responsibility for what you did. All you do is make excuses and act like you're the victim. You're not sorry, Emma. You're sorry you got caught." After that, her calls became less frequent, but the guilt trips didn't stop. She started leaning harder on the family angle, calling me selfish for not wanting to be part of her pregnancy. "Family needs to come together for the baby," she said during one particularly infuriating conversation. "Don't you dare use family as an excuse," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "You weren't thinking about family when you slept with my husband. You weren't thinking about family when you lied to me for months. So don't expect me to suddenly care about your idea of family now that it's convenient for you." She sniffled, and I could tell she was trying to sound pitiful. "I just want my baby to have a good life," she said. "I thought you'd understand that." "What I understand," I said, "is that you don't get to blow up my life and then act like I owe you anything." The conversations always left me shaking with anger and frustration. But what really got to me was how Emma seemed to have everyone else wrapped around her finger. My parents treated her like she was a delicate flower, bending over backward to accommodate her every whim. "She's carrying your niece or nephew," my dad said when I confronted him about how much they were coddling her. "We have to put the baby first." "Why?" I asked. "Why does everyone care more about this baby than the damage Emma has done to me?" My dad gave me a long, disappointed look. "Because we're a family," he said. "And families forgive." The word forgive felt like a slap in the face. How could they expect me to forgive Emma when she hadn't even apologized properly? How could they expect me to forgive her when she was still acting like I was the one in the wrong for not supporting her pregnancy? Every time I thought about it, I felt the anger bubbling up again. Emma wasn't just playing the victim. She was trying to rewrite the narrative entirely. In her version of events, she was the brave single mother trying to do what was best for her child, and I was the bitter sister who couldn't let go of the past. It was infuriating. It was exhausting. And worst of all, it was starting to make me question my own sanity. The more I talked to Emma and my parents, the more I realized they weren't going to change. They made their choice. They'd chosen Emma. And now, if I wanted to protect my peace, I'd have to make a choice of my own. I'd been avoiding my family as much as I could, but my mom had a way of pulling me back in. She called me relentlessly, leaving voicemail after voicemail, all variations of the same theme. "We need to talk. Emma misses you." Or my personal favorite, "The baby's going to need its aunt." I ignored most of them, but eventually, guilt, or maybe exhaustion, got the better of me, and I agreed to meet her for coffee. I told myself I'd keep it brief. I wasn't in the mood for another lecture about forgiveness or how I needed to put the baby first. But the second I walked into the cafe, I could see the tension in her face. She looked at me like I was already on trial. "You look tired," she said as I sat down. her tone more critical than concerned. Gee, thanks, I said dryly. Maybe it's because my entire life imploded, she sighed, stirring her tea with unnecessary force. I don't know why you insist on holding on to all this anger. It's not good for you, my name. I laughed bitterly. Right. Because I should just forgive Emma and Mark for stabbing me in the back? Is that what you want to hear? I'm not saying it'll be easy, she said. But sometimes we have to forgive people, even when it hurts. Why? I snapped. Why do I have to forgive her? Why does she get to blow up my life, and I'm the one who has to move on? Her jaw tightened. Because this family is falling apart, she said. And your anger isn't helping. If you just let go of some of this bitterness, maybe we could start to heal. Bitterness? I said, my voice rising. Emma destroyed my marriage, Mom. She betrayed me in the worst way possible. How am I supposed to just let it go? Maybe if you'd been paying more attention to your marriage, none of this would have happened, she shot back, her voice sharp. The words hit me like a slap. What did you just say? I asked, my blood running cold. She hesitated, looking like she wished she could take it back. I didn't mean it like that, she said quickly. Yes, you did, I said, my voice shaking. What the hell, Mom? Are you seriously blaming me for this? She avoided my eyes, her fingers fidgeting with her cup. I just mean, well, Emma said you and Mark were having problems before all this happened. Maybe if you hadn't been so busy with work. Stop, I said, cutting her off. Are you seriously about to defend what they did? Because I wasn't the perfect wife? I'm not defending them, she said weakly. Yes, you are, I said, my voice rising. Do you even hear yourself right now? You're making excuses for them, Mom. Do you even care about what this has done to me? She finally looked up, her eyes wide with something that almost looked like guilt. Of course I care, she said softly. But men get lonely, my name. It's just the way things are. The room seemed to tilt around me. I stared at her, barely able to process what she just said. What did you tell her? I asked, my voice low and dangerous. What? Emma, I said. What did you tell her? Did you actually say that to her? That men get lonely? Her silence was all the confirmation I needed. Unbelievable, I said, my voice shaking. You told her it was okay, didn't you? You told her it was fine to sleep with Mark because I wasn't doing enough to keep him happy. That's not what I said, she protested. Then what did you say? I demanded. Tell me the truth, Mom. Right now. She hesitated, but when she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. She was upset, she said. She told me Mark had been confiding in her about how distant you'd been lately. I told her that sometimes men get lonely, and that's when they make mistakes. I stared at her, stunned. Mistakes? I repeated, you're calling this a mistake? She looked flustered, defensive now. I wasn't encouraging her, she said quickly. I was just trying to explain how these things happen. I never thought she'd actually. Stop, I said, holding up a hand. Just stop. You knew, didn't you? You knew something was going on between them, and you didn't say anything? No, she said firmly. I didn't know. I suspected, maybe, but I didn't know for sure. That's just as bad, I said, my voice cracking. You're my mother. You were supposed to have my back, and instead, you gave her permission to destroy my life. Her face crumpled, and for a moment, I thought she might cry. But instead, you're being unfair. Unfair? I said, laughing bitterly. You're the one who practically enabled the affair, and I'm being unfair? You don't understand, she said, her voice trembling. It's not that simple. Yes, it is, I said. You took her side, Mom. Just admit it. You've been on her side this whole time. She didn't answer. She just looked down at her cup, her hands shaking slightly. I stood up, grabbing my back. I can't do this anymore, I said. You and Dad want to coddle her? Fine, but don't expect me to play along. I'm done. My name, please. No, I said, cutting her off. You made your choice, Mom. Now I'm making mine. I left the cafe without looking back, my heart pounding in my chest. As I walked to my car, I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. My mother, the one person I thought I could count on, had betrayed me in her own way. This wasn't just Emma's fault anymore. It wasn't just Mark's. My entire family had let me down, and I didn't know if I could ever forgive them. For the first time, I realized I might truly be on my own. And as painful as that thought was, it was starting to feel like the only way I could finally start to heal. After my mom's jaw-dropping revelation about her part in the affair, I was done. Not just with Emma, but with my parents too. For weeks, I tried to convince myself they'd eventually see reason, that they'd realize how badly they'd mishandled everything. But that coffee shop conversation killed whatever hope I had left. I sent a curt text to our family group chat the next day. I'm taking a break from everyone for a while. Don't call me. Don't text me. I need space. The backlash was immediate. My dad called within minutes, his voice stern and brimming with disappointment. You're being dramatic, he said, as if I was the one who had overstepped. Am I? I shot back. Because from where I'm standing, you've all picked a side and it's not mine. This isn't about sides, he argued. This is about family. No, it's about enabling Emma, I said, my voice shaking. You've let her get away with everything. You've excused her, coddled her, and now you're acting like I'm the problem because I won't forgive her. You're being selfish, he snapped. Selfish. That word hit like a slap. How dare you? I said quietly. You want to talk about selfish? Emma slept with my husband and destroyed my life. And you want to call me selfish because I won't go to her baby shower? That's when my mom got involved. She called later that night, her tone softer but no less manipulative. Honey, she said, this anger is going to eat you alive. I know you're hurt, but holding on to this grudge isn't healthy. It's not a grudge, I said through gritted teeth. It's a boundary. Boundaries are one thing, she said, but isolating yourself from your family is another. We need to stick together now more than ever. No, you need to stop enabling Emma, I snapped. My mom sighed like I was being difficult on purpose. She's having a baby. My name? Your niece or nephew? Do you really want to let this come between you and the baby? That was their favorite tactic, bringing up the baby like it was some kind of golden ticket to forgiveness. My parents treated Emma's pregnancy like a blank slate, as if the mere existence of a child erased all her wrongdoing. I don't care about the baby, I said coldly. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Finally, my mom said, I can't believe you just said that. Believe it, I said, because I'm not going to pretend everything is fine just because she got pregnant. Emma made her choices. Now she has to live with them. My parents didn't take the hint. Over the next few weeks, they ramped up the pressure, calling and texting constantly. My mom sent me photos of baby clothes Emma had picked out, as if I'd coo over them and forget everything. My dad left voicemails reminding me that the baby is innocent in all of this. I ignored them at first, but when my mom called to invite me to Emma's baby shower, I finally snapped. I'm not going, I said bluntly. She gasped like I just told her I was burning down the family home. But why? It's just one afternoon. You don't even have to talk to her if you don't want to, because I'm not going to sit there and pretend I'm happy for her, I said. I'm not going to play along with this charade. It's not a charade, she insisted. It's family. No, it's a circus, I shot back. And I'm not interested in being part of the show. After that, my relationship with my parents deteriorated completely. My dad called me bitter and ungrateful, accusing me of tearing the family apart. My mom cried over the phone, telling me I was breaking her heart. But I stood my ground. 4 years, I'd been over backward to be the responsible one, the peacemaker, the person who always kept the family together. And look where it got me, betrayed, abandoned, and expected to forgive without so much as an apology. Emma, meanwhile, leaned into her role as the family's golden child. She told anyone who would listen how hard her pregnancy was, how much she was struggling as a single mom-to-be. She painted herself as a tragic figure, conveniently leaving out the part where she was the architect of her own misery. Every time my mom called, she gave me an update on Emma's life, her voice dripping with concern. She's been so emotional lately, she'd say. And the baby is due any day now. Don't you think it's time to put this behind you? No, I'd say. It's not. By the time Emma gave birth, I'd cut off nearly all contact with my family. My mom texted me a photo of the baby, a wrinkly little newborn wrapped in a pink blanket, with the caption, Your niece is here. I hope you'll come meet her soon. I stared at the photo for a long time, my emotions warring with each other. Part of me wanted to reach out, to let go of the anger and be part of the family again. But the larger part of me knew I couldn't. Emma hadn't changed. My parents hadn't changed. And no amount of baby pictures or guilt trips would erase the fact that they'd all chosen her over me. I deleted the text without replying. For the first time in my life, I felt like an outsider in my own family. But as painful as it was, it also felt freeing. I wasn't their scapegoat anymore. I wasn't their fixer or their punching bag. I was just me. And for now, that was enough. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon when Emma called me. I hadn't spoken to her in months, and seeing her name flash on my phone sent a familiar wave of anger and exhaustion washing over me. Part of me wanted to ignore it, just let it go to voicemail and move on with my day. But curiosity got the better of me. Against my better judgment, I answered. The first thing I heard was her sobbing. "Emma," I said cautiously, already bracing myself for whatever drama she was about to unload. "It's Mark," she choked out. He cheated on me." I let her words hang in the air for a moment, my mind racing. Mark cheated? On her? I shouldn't have been surprised. After all, this was the same man who had betrayed me. But hearing it still stirred something unexpected inside me. "Are you serious?" I said finally, my tone flat. "Yes," she wailed. "He's been hooking up with some girl from work for months. I found messages on his phone, and when I confronted him, he didn't even deny it. He said he wasn't happy and that he didn't want to do this anymore." I almost laughed at the irony. Wasn't happy. Where had I heard that excuse before? "Wow," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "What a shocker. Who could have seen that coming?" She ignored my tone, too wrapped up in her own misery to notice. "And now he's not even answering my calls," she sobbed. "He hasn't seen the baby in weeks. I don't know what to do. My name? I'm so scared." I wish I could say I felt sorry for her, but I didn't. Not even a little. Instead, all I could think about was how she destroyed my life for this man. This man who was now showing her exactly who he really was. "What did you expect?" I said, my voice sharp. She sniffled. What did you expect, Emma?" I repeated. "You knew what kind of man he was when you got involved with him. Did you really think you'd be the exception? That he'd magically turn into a good guy for you? That's not fair," she said, her voice breaking. "I made a mistake, okay? I know I hurt you, but I thought he loved me." I let out a bitter laugh. "You thought he loved you? Emma, he didn't even respect you. If he did, he wouldn't have cheated on me with you. And now you're surprised that he's cheating on you too." She went quiet for a moment, and I could almost hear her trying to find the right words to get me on her side. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft and pleading. "I know I don't deserve your sympathy," she said, "but I need you right now, my name. I need my big sister. Please." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. There was a time when I would have done anything for her, when I would have dropped everything to help her. But that version of me didn't exist anymore. She'd killed it the moment she decided to betray me. "You needed me?" I said, my voice icy. "You needed me when you were sneaking around with my husband? You needed me when you were lying to my face every day? Funny, I don't remember you needing me then." "I was stupid," she said desperately. "I was selfish, and I hate myself for it. But I'm trying to be better. I don't know what to do." I sighed, my anger simmering just below the surface. "Emma, you made your choices. You chose Mark. You chose to betray me. And now, you're dealing with the consequences of those choices. It's not my job to fix this for you." She started crying again, and for a split second, I felt a pang of guilt, but I pushed it away. She wasn't crying for me. She was crying for herself. "Please," she whispered. "I'm sorry, okay? I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you." I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. "I can't do this, Emma. I can't be there for you. Some things are unforgivable, and you crossed that line a long time ago." "But we're sisters," she said, her voice cracking. "Not anymore," I said quietly. "You made sure of that." I hung up before she could respond, my hands trembling. For the rest of the day, her words lingered in my mind. Part of me wanted to reach out, to forgive her, to rebuild the relationship we'd once had. But every time I thought about it, I remembered the betrayal. I remembered how she lied to me, how she'd torn my life apart and expected me to just move on. She wanted my help now, but where was she when I needed her? Where was her loyalty, her empathy, her remorse when she was sneaking around with my husband? No, I couldn't do it. Forgiving her wouldn't fix anything. It would only open the door for more pain. A week later, my mom called to tell me about Emma's situation, as if I didn't already know. "Mark's being terrible," she said. "He hasn't even offered to help with the baby. Emma's really struggling." "That's not my problem," I said firmly. My mom sighed. "She's your sister. My name? She needs you." "No, she doesn't," I said. "She needs to deal with the consequences of her actions. And so do you." I ended the call before she could argue. Emma's karma had finally caught up to her, and as much as my parents wanted to guilt-trip me into getting involved, I wasn't going to let them. For once, I was choosing myself. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilty about it. Finalizing the divorce felt like taking a deep breath after being underwater for too long. I sat across from my lawyer, signing the last of the paperwork, and when I handed her the pen, I felt something lift off my chest. It wasn't joy, not yet, but it was relief. Mark was no longer a part of my life in any official capacity. He was just a bad chapter one could finally close. After the divorce was finalized, I knew staying in the same city wasn't an option. Everywhere I went, there were reminders of what I'd lost. The restaurant Mark and I used to go to for date nights, the park where we talked about our plans for the future, even the coffee shop where I'd had that devastating argument with my mom. This city wasn't home anymore. It was a graveyard of memories I wanted to leave behind. I started applying for jobs in other cities, determined to make a fresh start. Within a month, I'd landed a position that seemed almost too good to be true. A chance to move somewhere new, somewhere I could start over. I packed up my things, sold what I didn't need, and left without saying goodbye to anyone except a few close friends. The first night in my new apartment, I sat on the floor with a box of pizza and a bottle of cheap wine, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes. It was quiet, almost eerily so, but for the first time in what felt like forever, the silence didn't feel heavy. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I started decorating my apartment, filling it with things that felt like me. Not the version of me that had been shaped by my family or my marriage, but the person I was rediscovering. I went out to explore the city, made a point to meet my coworkers, and even signed up for a yoga class, something I'd always wanted to try but never made time for. Blocking Emma and my parents on social media was a necessary step, even though it felt harsh at first. But every time I thought about unblocking them, I remembered how their presence in my life had drained me, how their constant guilt-tripping and excuses had only made things worse. Some bridges are meant to be burned, I told myself, and this was one of them. Of course, the past didn't disappear completely. Every now and then, I'd hear updates about Emma through mutual friends. Apparently, she'd had the baby, a little girl. From what I'd been told, Emma was struggling as a single mom. Mark was nowhere to be found, and my parents were doing everything they could to support her, financially and otherwise. She's going through a lot, one friend had said during a phone call. Maybe you could reach out. Just for the baby's sake. I'd laughed bitterly at that. The baby's sake. It was the same line my parents had used over and over, as if the existence of a child erased everything Emma had done to me. But the truth was, I didn't know that baby anything. I didn't know Emma anything. I'd given her enough of my life already. My parents, predictably, didn't stop trying to pull me back in. They called from new numbers, sent emails I deleted without reading, and even tried sending me handwritten letters. In one particularly desperate message, my mom wrote, "This family has been through so much. It's time to heal. Come home. My name? We need you." But I didn't reply, because the truth was, I didn't need them anymore. For so long, I'd believed that family was everything, that blood ties were unbreakable, and that forgiveness was always the answer. But this whole experience had taught me otherwise. Family isn't about blood. It's about trust. It's about respect. And once those things are broken, sometimes there's no going back. Moving to a new city didn't fix everything overnight. I still had bad days. Days when the anger bubbled up, or the loneliness felt unbearable, or I wondered if I'd made the right choice. But those days were fewer and farther between. One evening, I was sitting on my balcony, watching the sun dip below the skyline, when I realized something. For the first time in years, I felt at peace. Not happy, exactly, but steady, like I was finally standing on solid ground again. Emma and Mark had taken so much from me. My marriage, my trust, my sense of security, but they hadn't taken everything. I still had myself, and that was enough to rebuild. As I look back now, I don't regret the decisions I made. Cutting off Emma and my parents was painful, but it was necessary. Sometimes, the best thing you can do for yourself is walk away from the people who hurt you, even if they're family. Because at the end of the day, the only person I can count on to protect my peace is me. And I'm finally learning how to do just that.